Rogue Galaxy is an action RPG developed by Level 5 for the PS2. It was released on December 8, 2005 in Japan, January 30, 2007 in North America, and September 6, 2007 in Europe. Nowadays, it is a big cult classic regarded as one of the best RPGs of its generation. So today, we're going to take a look at 10 things you may not know about this controversial game. Number 10. Dark Cloud 3. Dark Cloud 1 and 2 are action RPGs also on the PS2 developed by Level 5. At some point during 2003, right after the release of the second one, the company was already planning a third game in the series. However, since they weren't very successful, especially in the West, they became more niche than anything. Therefore, Akihiro Hino, the director of Level 5 and his team, decided to go into a different direction. The result was Rogue Galaxy, another action RPG with cel-shaded graphics with similarities between the Dark Cloud series. The problem was that slightly before the production began, it was indeed going to be called Dark Cloud 3, and there were a few promotionals of it. In the end, Level 5 abandoned the franchise, but thanks to this new information, fans have been itching for a real Dark Cloud 3, or at least a new Rogue Galaxy game still nowadays. Number 9. Localization took 2 years. Rogue Galaxy was released on December 8, 2005 in Japan, but the West wouldn't get this game until January 30, 2007 in North America and September 6 in Europe. That's over 2 years of localization. So who did the job? Sony itself! It's surprising how such a powerful and rich company will take over 2 years to release a game outside Japan, when usually RPGs took around a year or so to do so back in the day. Well, many reasons are involved into this, and we'll see the most important ones in this video. Number 8. Open World. Rogue Galaxy's initial idea was to create a vastly enormous RPG resembling an open world experience. Players will be able to traverse to many different planets involving all sorts of races, visuals, and side quests. The amount of planets was going to be unaccountable, procedurally generated as the player explored them. Sony wasn't too fond of the idea of making it so big, so the planets were considerably numbered. Still, Rogue Galaxy retained its semi-open world characteristics, which ended in having a giant world, therefore having a giant script. This was one of the reasons why it took Rogue Galaxy so long to be localized outside Japan. Number 7. First the characters, then the world. Many RPG developers tend to create the world first so they can have an idea of what kind of characters are going to be living in it. Well, in Rogue Galaxy's case, this wasn't the procedure. Akihiro Hino said in an interview that they first created the characters and then created the world, based on their designs. The idea was to give life to a science fiction universe with strong fantasy elements, which naturally gave birth to some of the characters. Just the Rogue, the protagonist, went under several different design changes, while some of the others retained their initial form. Since each character looked entirely different from the others, the developers then started creating the planets based on their look. Interesting, huh? Number 6. Director's Cut. Yeah, well, this term is usually used on movies more than anything, not in video games. But Rogue Galaxy, believe it or not, had one, and what's even more baffling is that it was a Japan exclusive based on the North American release. So here's the main reason why the localization took over 2 years. Sony wanted this game to be big, and Level 5 wanted it to compete against giant series such as Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. To make its debut and the experience even better, both companies added a lot of extra stuff to the Western release. New features included a new planet with its own story and characters, over 100 weapons and items, additional costumes for each character, 2,000 lines of additional voice dialogue, new abilities for everyone, etc. In other words, the North American release was the perfect, complete version of the game. Sony and Level 5 felt that Japan needed to have this same edition, so they went on to relocalize it to their own country under the name Director's Cut. Number 5. No manga and no collector's edition. Didn't I just say that Sony wanted this game to be big, like a huge commercial success? Well, it looks like their attention went solely on the game's release and nothing more. Usually RPGs, even some of the niche ones, get a manga based on the game, a novelization, and a special edition of some sorts. Rogue Galaxy got nothing. There's no explanation for this, maybe because nobody has ever asked Sony or Level 5 about it. Surprisingly though, there was a North American release of a demo disc that included a big poster and a cloth map. Okay, why didn't they include these things in a small special edition at least? Of course, there are a few theories, but we'll get to that later. The point is that many RPGs didn't get anything either back in the day, as video game collecting wasn't yet such a big thing as it is nowadays. Number 4. Sony's insane expectations. So here's the theory then. The reasons why this game took so long in both development and localization was because both companies wanted it to be big, like seriously big. Nevertheless, and sadly, the game wasn't exactly successful, even though it received great reviews all around the world. Sony was expecting Rogue Galaxy to sell 1 million units. Jesus! However, it didn't even reach half of that by the end of the year. The Western release had a similar fate. Level 5 had co-developed Dragon Quest VIII, also on the PS2, and that game had been overly successful. Sony thought, of course, that Level 5 was a big name, big enough to create another masterpiece in sales. Well, perhaps they went a little too far because the game wasn't perfect and wasn't even properly marketed. Sony's disappointment could be the reason why there wasn't any special editions or any manga based on the game. Number 3. Difficulty controversy. The original Japanese version was criticized for being unbalanced. It was extremely easy at some parts and extremely hard in others. When it was localized, Level 5 fixed all of this and rebalanced the difficulty of the game. Nevertheless, apparently it was still too hard for Western gamers, as during its first years, you will often see people complaining in forums on how unfair the game was. Main criticism usually went against the dungeon design, with players getting lost very easily into a labyrinth with a high encounter rate. In recent years, obviously with the help of many guides, tricks, and tips on the internet, it isn't considered as hard as it was before. Some gamers will often point out the fact that the game is actually easy. Well, at least people still agree that the dungeon map design is terrible. Several months ago I made a video about this controversial fact. I'll leave it at the end of this one so you can see a more detailed explanation of it. Number 2. Star Wars Parody. Everybody who has played the game, even if it's just the beginning, can easily tell the references to Star Wars or even Star Trek. Many gamers were led to believe that Rogue Galaxy had been influenced by them. The answer is no! Actually, it was the total opposite. In an interview that I'll leave in the description, Akihiro Hino said that they were tired of science fiction stereotypes in worlds and characters, which is the reason why they incorporated medieval fantasy elements in the game. As a parody, they left some cliches in it, most notably the background of Jaster Rogue being compared to Luke Skywalker in his desire to explore the galaxy. Number 1. Final Fantasy XII vs Skies of Arcadia vs Rogue Galaxy. Well, it turns out the Sky Pirate plot had been done before in other games, most notably Skies of Arcadia on the Dreamcast, released in the year 2000. Many comparisons have been done between both games for sharing similar themes. There was also Final Fantasy XII, released just a few months after Rogue Galaxy. These games revolve around a character who dreams about being a sky pirate and traveling the world. Eventually, somewhat early in the game, they meet their dream, but get dragged into all sorts of dangerous missions and even political dramas. Steampunk elements are present, fantasy elements are also present, and they travel around many big and vastly different areas with semi-open world features. I bet if you played Rogue Galaxy, this sounds really familiar. But even though Skies of Arcadia did it first, and probably other RPGs or games came up before with similar ideas, the main comparison always seems to be against Final Fantasy XII, a game that completely overshadowed Rogue Galaxy even though it was released afterwards. Was Rogue Galaxy ahead of its time? Or did it just fail coincidentally because of its similarities with Final Fantasy XII? You be the judge. Well guys, that was my take into Rogue Galaxy, a great action RPG on the PS2. If you know more things about it that might be interesting, please share them in the comments section. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!